All right, YouTube, how you doing? Welcome back to the channel. It is Monday, April 15th. We got a full MLB slate to dive into in today's video, like we always do when we go through each and every one of these games. I'll give you my lean on the side. I'll give you my lean on the total. We'll talk about any other plays like player props that I like within the game as well. But as always, keep an eye on the pinned comment. That is where all of my final plays will live. So if you do want to go ahead and fade me and do the opposite of all my picks, I'll list them out in the pinned comment. In terms of yesterday, rocky-ish night. We didn't go too crazy here. A 1-2, and then we had to push a 1-2 and 1 night. I guess the one silver lining here is that the one that I would like to cash the plus 115 odds for the Cubs first 5. So that kind of softens the blow a little bit. Yankees almost got it done, but nonetheless, a 1-2 in 1 night, so slightly in the red there. Hoping to be a little bit better tonight, but let's change up the vibes. Give a shout out to the Daily Dinger cash here. We had Angry Tater call Max Muncy. Max Muncy sends one deep. If you guys don't know what the Daily Dinger is, it's just a way to get potentially shouted out on the channel. All you got to use is hashtag Daily Dinger in the comments and list a player that you think is going deep today. And then come tomorrow's video, I'll look for someone that got it correct and give you a shout out. So shout out to Angry Taylor for this one. Let's go ahead and jump into today's slate. Like I said, we got a big one, but, you know, it's kind of just getting into the full swing of baseball season, right? So, guys, hit that subscribe button. Hit that like button as well. We're cruising here. You guys have been super supportive, and I cannot thank you enough. The only thing I can do is continue to grind and continue to show up every day, win or loss, and make these videos. So I appreciate the hell out of you guys. Hit that subscribe button and hit that like button. Let's jump in. We got Boston taking on Cleveland. Boston coming out of a series with the Angels here. They take 2 of those, just losing game number 1, and it really was a bad one. But then they win game number 2 and game number 3 in that. Cleveland, tough series against the Yanks, but they did manage to squeeze one out yesterday. They win that game 8-7. On the year, the Red Sox have been kind of, exceeding expectations because everyone thinks they're going to be terrible. Cleveland, though, kind of a sneaky 10-5 to start the year. On the mound today for the Red Sox going to be Cutter Crawford, who has looked honestly very good this year. He's 0.57 ERA, 0.96 whip, a 2.68 FIP, almost a 30% K rate. Like, the dude has been pitching very well. Going up against Xavier Curry, who we don't have any stats from this year for, but in his last 5 starts, and he's had some opening type starts, but then some solid starts as well. For 3.2 ERA, the team 1-4 in those starts toward the end of last year. So I think a pitching edge certainly goes to the Red Sox here, due to the fact that we've seen Cutter Crawford pitches here for starters, or for one, but also when we've seen him, he's actually pitched very well. So pitching edge to the Red Sox, but there is definitely a slight batting edge here for Cleveland. Not that they're excelling in anything. In fact, they're kind of middle of the pack in most stats, but WRC plus, they are a top 10 team against right-handed pitchers. Cutter Crawford being a righty, but the Red Sox, if we flash over to the dashboard here, you'll be able to see the Red Sox, in terms of, we don't have any Curry data yet, but Red Sox kind of like middle of the pack to bottom of the pack in everything when it comes to hitting. You can see our algorithm has them slightly in the red, not even in the yellow, so definitely I guess I would say a strong lean towards the offense here of Cleveland. And then even bullpens. Both teams have really good bullpens right now, but they're going to be taxed. A lot of guys pitched yesterday, so this is not going to be a strong bullpen for either team. So if you go pitching edge, batting edge, you got to pick one of those, right? I am going to go pitching edge because, like I said, Cleveland's offense isn't greened out. Like, they're not superb right now. So I do think that there's going to be more of a tilt towards pitching in this spot. So I'll lean towards the Red Sox here in this spot. My one concern, and the thing that I probably don't end up pulling the trig on and betting, is due to the fact that it's minus 134. Based on, I guess, what we would see from the batting and compared to the pitching and whatnot, I'd like to see this more in like the minus 115 range, to be honest. But Red Sox at home, taking 2 of their last series, playing decent baseball at times this year. I get it. So I'm going to lean Sox, but I don't know if that makes its way into being a final play. In terms of the total, like I said, I do think that this is a spot where Cutter Crawford can pitch well, but those bullpens, both of which are taxed, if you're looking at that 9.5, I think you got to lean towards the over because they're not going to have, some of their main guys here. For Cleveland, their closer, Clace, doesn't look like he may be able to go. Bede in the bullpen may not be able to go. Gaddis threw 20 pitches yesterday. Then you flash over to the Red Sox. Martin gets hurt. Their setup man. They do have Winkowski, but Jansen threw 25 pitches. Slayton through 34, and he's starting to look good. Like, a lot of guys threw in the pen for these two teams yesterday. So I think this one goes over because maybe there's some late runs. All right, Baltimore taking on Minnesota here. Cole Irvin on the mound for Baltimore. Going up against Louis Varland. I wouldn't say either one of these guys has looked stellar to start the year here. Cole Irvin, so far in the year, 8.1 ERA, a 1.9 whip. But you look at that and you almost throw up, right? And we'll get ready to throw up twice. Louis Varland, 9 ERA, 2 whip, 7.4 FIP. Like, neither one of these pitchers really looking strong to start the year. I guess if you had to say who looked better, numbers-wise, Cole Irvin has. But to be fair to Louis Varland, he gets a start against Milwaukee, and then the Dodgers, you know, like, that's not the easiest of things, whereas Cole Irvin went up against Kansas City in Boston, so I guess there is sort of a strength of schedule thing to take into account there, so I'm not really going to give a pitching edge or even kind of factor that in, but where there is a huge discrepancy is going to be in the offenses here. So Minnesota against left-handed pitchers, 25th in terms of average, 23rd in WRC+, OPS, 24th, isolated power, 19th, slugging percentage, 23rd, compared to Baltimore against right-handed pitchers here, we have actually, so yeah, Cole Irvin, lefty. Sorry, I was getting confused. I was all mixed up. But so that was all right. Baltimore here against a right-handed pitcher, 10th best average, 6th best WRC+, 7th best K rate, isolated power 3rd, slugging 4th, OPS 6th. Like, there's a clear offensive advantage here for Baltimore in this spot. You saw it in the last 2 games too. 5 runs scored, 6 runs scored. On the season, they're averaging 5.5 runs scored, whereas Minnesota's only averaging 3.5 runs scored. But they did have, 3+ runs in 3 of those 4 games against Detroit. I think the thing here would just be to take into account the odds. If you can get the Orioles here in the -140s, it's a lot of juice, but I think I lean towards the favorite here, okay? But if that line moves at all and continues to move or anything like that, it's probably going to be end up something that I just pass on, because you're not going to be able to get me to Baltimore -1.5. But, this line opened up, I want to say, at like -138, moved to -142. Now it's -148, so it's already moved 10 cents. It's going to be a Baltimore or nothing for me, just because I don't know if I can get behind Minnesota's bats versus a left-handed pitcher. But the one thing I will say is, like, looking at Cole Irvin, it's like, well, he's not going to do all that much, right? So that could be your angle if you wanted to take a swing, no pun intended, on Minnesota here at +130. I just can't get there, so I'm going to lean in that direction. In terms of a total here, kind of split. I mean, I've seen 9 on some books, and it's 8.5 right now, so maybe I'll lean towards the over, kind of trusting that line movement in a sense. And if you wanted to take over 9, which you have push potential, but it's very similar to 8.5, you can get +100 odds over on Caesars right now. So maybe that could be some sort of a move that you look at here. And then in terms of player props here, I would consider some of these the Twins players that you can get some unders on, like Jose Miranda under 1.5 bases, going up against Cole Irvin. He has 4 plate appearances, 0 hits, 0 bases. Cole Irvin actually does pitch against right-handed batters a little bit better than he does lefties, using last year's data, but he just doesn't have, like, it's tough to trust Cole Irvin. But again, like, I don't trust these Minnesota bats, so I'd look at some of their unders. Like, for -140, you can get Miranda's under. Like, I do think that could be a good play for a guy that's yet to get 2 bases in his 5 starts this season. All right, Philadelphia taking on Colorado. This obviously doesn't have the best, I guess, juice, right? Like, what are we looking at here? Philadelphia -275. Honestly, Philly hasn't, like, proven themselves to me enough to say, rah, let's go. They they split the series against Pittsburgh, but Colorado obviously just terrible. They did steal one against Toronto, so good on them. They followed up with a 3-run game and then a 0-run game yesterday. On the bump's going to be Cal Quantrill. Enough said about him, right? Going up against Aaron Nola, who I do know is a good pitcher, and we trust is a good pitcher, but hasn't really put together, like, a really strong start to his season, right? Had one good start, and who was that against? One good start against Washington. Then he played St. Louis, and he played Atlanta. Didn't look all that great in those starts. So maybe he's turning things around, because obviously Atlanta, that's a tough matchup. He should be good against Colorado today, but they actually bat right-handed pitchers, like, fairly well for average, getting on base as well. So this isn't as, like, much of a lock as you'd say. So that's why I'm, like, looking at this saying, I don't think this one has the juice for today, because there's no way I can bet Colorado, right? But there's also no way I can take you know, those odds of minus 275. So a little worrisome. This probably ends up being a pass for me. The bullpens are both taxed and terrible. In fact, if we flash into the dashboard here, guys, and by the way, this dashboard still available to everyone. I have a link in the pinned comment. I think pretty soon, once we build it out a little bit more and make it a little bit more robust, it's going to be a ballers only. Ballers are the members on the channel, those who support with $2.99 a month. But for now, everybody can check it out. So if you want to see if it's for you, it's there. What we do is we have a bunch of back-end stats, and we just have game-by-game sort of dashboard, so you can get a really good, quick view of what the situation is of the game. And then we have an algorithm built for starting pitching, batting, as well as bullpen. A lot more coming to, some cool stuff here. But nonetheless, you can see Philadelphia, like, it doesn't really look like, just by the colors, they have that much of an advantage offensively, which is kind of shocking. But pitching, you know, not all that great, and the bullpen's not all that great. So kind of a crummy game, especially to consider these odds. But I'm not going to be betting Colorado. So I guess if I really did have a gun to my head and had to make a play, I'd tell you I'm rolling with Philadelphia, but in some sort of a parlay, just because Philly hasn't been off to the hottest start or anything like that, but they're still by far a better team than Colorado. You know what I mean? So yeah, maybe we'll throw this into a parlay or something like that, but that minus 275 is an absolute odds killer. From a total perspective, we're sitting at 8.5 as of right now. I just showed you the offense for Philly, you know, doesn't really look well here or match up well. So I could totally see this being like a Phillies 5-2 or Phillies 4-2 type of a game where, yeah, they looked like minus 275 favorites throughout the whole thing, but not many runs were scored overall because, again, Colorado has those stats back in them, you know, against right-handed pitchers, but I don't really think, like, they're not scoring that many runs, right? 6th best in average, but then you look at their WRC plus, 21st. So they're just not getting guys home. In terms of player props here, one decent play I could look at is actually going to be Brandon Marsh over 0.5 runs. The reason I'd consider it is because he's plus 115 on FanDuel, so this is an EV play, minus 120 on most other sportsbooks. So literally a decent amount of value there overall, right? So I think that is going to be something that we potentially roll with, but I wouldn't take that if you don't have, you know, FanDuel, if that makes sense. Like, the value in this play truly is the fact that you're getting it for plus 115, but it's minus 120 and beyond on most sportsbooks. I do think that he can do it, but obviously, like, it's more of a value play than it is a true lock type of a play. So if you have FanDuel and you can get that at plus money, just know most other sportsbooks are charging negative money for it. So go check that out. And honestly, that leads us right into what I wanted to talk about next, which is OddsJam. You've seen me talk about it before, but this tool, the positive EV tool, is absolutely goated. You can see that's how we found that Brandon Marsh play here. It shows 115. Then we can even drag this up, and that'll open in a second. But 115 plus 115, right? Most sportsbooks out here minus 121. You have BetMGM minus 120. You have Caesars minus 115, DraftKings minus 120, ESPN minus 120. The list goes on. Yet FanDuel is still out here, right? Charging 115 for it. So it could definitely be a smart play. We've had a really good track record here. Let's see if we can get our bet tracker to load. This is our month of April so far, just doing these bet it and forget it type plays with the EV tracker. Throwing, I think, we have our settings to anywhere from, I think it's like 15 to 35 bucks on a game, and it's just crazy. We've already made over $630 on the month. And again, we've made videos about EV and everything like that. Like, this is legit, guys. And again, it's only doing like, you know, $15 to $35 bets. We're just killing it in the MLB this year. So go ahead and check out OddsJam, guys. That link is going to be in the pinned comment. You can also use code GUYBOSTON. You'll get 25% off. The link gives you a free trial, 7 days, and then that code is going to give you 25% off. That link will be in the pinned comment. Proof's in the pudding. I'm not blowing smoke up your ass or selling you fake bill of goods. Literally, we're doing this, and that's our profit on the month. Is it going to be like that every single month? No, but there's math, and the math is math. And go check it out, guys. That link in the pinned comment. Next up, we have Miami taking on San Francisco. Here on the mound for Miami is going to be AJ Puke going up against Kyle Harrison, who I wouldn't necessarily say has been that much better, but definitely has had a better year to start the year than AJ Puck. He just really hasn't looked tremendous, and honestly, you can look at his stats and be like, oh, well, you know, his last 2 starts, only 2 earned runs and then 1 earned runs. Well, he's letting guys on, he's letting them get to him, and he's not even making it into the, you know, nearly the 5th. He's not making past the 5th inning. He's 2 innings pitched in his first start, 4 innings pitched in his second start, and then he goes up against the Yankees and he pitched 4 2/3. What I will say is he faced kind of a Pittsburgh team that started hot, and then I wouldn't say the Angels were all that good, but then he faced New York, the Yankees, and it's like, yeah, I guess you can kind of give him a pass there. Not necessarily, though. But then we have Kyle Harrison. Like I said, he's pitching deeper into the games, but that's resulting in more runs coming in, too. So two non-great pitchers in this spot, which I'll get my first play out of the way. I still like the Nerfy in this spot, just overall. So we've seen Harrison cashes in 2 straight against the Dodgers and Washington, and I don't think that this Miami lineup is going to look all that great against him here whatsoever. So I know it's crazy to be like, hey, these pitchers haven't been great, but give me the Nerfy, which is no runs in the first inning. But I still like that spot. Both of them being lefties. Miami really struggling against lefties this year, and third worst average, worst WRC plus, isolated power worst, slugging worst, OPS worst. So they shouldn't be able to tag Kyle Harrison, at least in the first inning, that easily, right? And then we look over to AJ Puck here. 2 of his 3 games, he's also resulted in the Nerfy as well. So I look at that and I say, okay, you know what? Don't necessarily hate it. Like, let's just get through 1, 2, and 3 here, in a sense, and let's get out of town. So give me the Nerfy. I'll also lean towards San Francisco pretty, strongly. The one concern, do you smell the trap? Why is San Francisco, who is definitely, actually, I shouldn't even say definitely, right? They've had their struggles, but I'll say definitely a better team than Miami, only -115 in this spot. It could be because San Francisco's bullpen doesn't look... Actually, no, Miami's the bullpen that's taxed in this matchup, so there's another reason why it's why is this the line, right? I feel like this should be San Francisco -130, but it's -115, so... If it smells like a trap, sometimes it is, usually is, right? But I'm still gonna, walk right into it because I want the potential reward in the middle of those claws that go like this. So I'll take San Francisco on the money line, but those odds kind of freaking me out. In terms of the total, 8.5, I took the Nerfy, right? But I can't imagine that a taxed Miami bullpen, 2 bad pitchers. I have to try and forget about the fact that Miami just can't hit lefties, right? But I have to lean towards the over. I just don't see much, stellar pitching coming out of this. The one concern is well, is there going to be offense? But I'm going to lean towards the over anyways. It's not my favorite play in this. I'd probably go San Francisco money line, then the Nerfy, and then the total. And those are the only 3 things I'm really considering in this spot. But I am really considering the San Francisco, but I just don't want to get caught in a trap, man. They should be, I think they should be at least -125 and beyond, but they're -115. All right, we got the Tigers taking on Texas here. Detroit starting Reese Olson on the mound for Texas is former Tiger Michael Lorenzen here in this spot. This is a tough one because I don't necessarily want to sit there and act like I trust Michael Lorenzen. We haven't seen him yet this season. He didn't, close out his 2023 season all that well with Philadelphia. Detroit has Reese Olson on the mound, who looked good to start the year. He went up against the Mets, pitched 5 2/3, 3 hits, 0 earned runs, only 3 Ks, right? But then he faced Pittsburgh, who, yeah, you can make the argument that Pittsburgh had a run and was batting and is to some degree batting well, but he went 4 1/3, 9 hits, 6 earned runs, 0 home runs, which just means he was just getting batted around, right? It wasn't even a couple big plays. So that's where I'm all right, I don't know if I can trust Lorenzen. Reese Olson, we know what we're getting, but the one kind of glaring issue to me for Detroit here is going to be the bats. This is a far better Texas lineup overall, but again, both these pitchers coming from the right side, far better lineup against right-handed pitchers here. And Texas, honestly, kind of hasn't had the easiest of schedules. You look at their record, 8-8. Oh, that's not that great, right? Well, they went up against Houston, and then they went up against Oakland, and they played Houston again. The Oakland series, you can definitely say, well, they should have won more than 1 game in that series. I hear you there, but at some point, this Texas team must seem like they're going to turn around, and they're averaging almost 2 runs more per game scored than this Tigers team. So if Reese Olson, looked really good again in his second start, maybe I can get there, but I'm trusting the Texas offense in this spot for sure. I'm definitely going to be looking at this first 5, though. I don't want anything to do with this Texas bullpen. 23rd ERA rank, 23rd whip rank as well, whereas Detroit's sitting there, number 1 ERA in the bullpen and number 2 when it comes to a whip perspective. I mean, you could say, let's see, I don't have this up in my notes here, but their bullpen in terms of recent usage and whatnot, They probably have guys that just went recently, right? Yeah, closer gone, potentially, 28 pitches yesterday, 12 pitches for Vest. So yeah, they definitely have guys that bullpen shouldn't be as sharp as normal, but still, this Texas bullpen, I don't care if they're healthy or not, hasn't been the best bullpen. So then, ergo, we're looking at the first 5 in this spot as well, right? I might even consider maybe a Texas team total if we can get some good odds. I just think that this is a spot in which Texas kind of gets back on the win train and scores a decent amount of runs. So by saying that, I'll probably also lean towards the over as well, especially, if I think Texas scores a lot of runs. But Texas first 5 is probably going to be my main play in this spot. In terms of odds, decent odds. They are favorites, but, this is closer to a pick 'em than one would think. It's just going to come down to can Lorenzen do anything, which we've kind of ragged on him plenty of times last year and whatnot, just because I just feel like the dude always drops the ball. But one man's opinion. Tampa Bay taking on the Angels here. This one, when I first started looking at it, I was like, oh, this is Tampa Bay all day long, right? And then as I dig even deeper, I guess it's not as apparent or as clear. I still do lean Tampa Bay, okay? But this is a spot in which I don't know if minus 160 is even a fair price. Like they, in terms of the pitching here, Zach Eflin on the mound for Tampa Bay. He's definitely looked better than Patrick Sandoval to start the year, but some of their numbers are fairly, alarming for Eflin here. 5.07 FIP, which is pretty much like an ERA without taking into account errors from fielders or any decisions made by fielders. It's literally called fielding independent pitching. Whereas the FIP for Patrick Sandoval is 2.76, and that's a good metric, guys, to kind of look at a pitcher in the perspective of putting him in a vacuum versus looking at, what can happen around him with other players. So FIP, FIP, if you don't know that stat, definitely something to look at. But when a guy has a FIP way lower than an ERA, it's usually a sign that he's actually been pitching well. The team necessarily behind him hasn't been looking all that great, which is the case for Sandoval. So I'm not ready to say, hey, like let's back Sandoval. Like, if that's not what I'm saying, but it is something to definitely keep an eye on here because he has, plenty of earned runs on the season, 3, 2, and 4 in his 3 starts. Eflin, not all that much better though, right? He had 6, 1 against Texas, which is impressive, and then 5 when these teams, last played, which is when was that? That was April. Was it? Yeah, didn't they play 2 series ago? So Eflin got the start and got lit up. So it's like, you look at that and it's like, okay, again, this maybe should have been one that it's like, Tampa Bay all day. I don't know if it's that easy, so I'll lean Tampa Bay, but it wouldn't surprise me if the Angels win this game. I just think that, plus 142. If this was in the plus 150s, I think I might consider it, to be honest. I might consider it because I don't think the batting's that different either. And then bullpen-wise, like, LA should have a better bullpen than Tampa Bay. So call me crazy, but that could have been a move here. But if I were to bet this game, I'm probably looking at a couple player props here. One that I do really like is going to be Jose Calabero, over 0.5 total bases here. You can get that for minus 119, minus 130, actually. So good spot. Going up against left-handed pitcher, using last year as an example, he had a 221 average overall, right? Well, if you look at him against lefties, that jumps to 265, which is obviously a good sign. And then Patrick Sandoval, his average against jumps up 10 points from 256 to over 260 when it comes to going up against a right-handed batter. And Calabero is a right-handed batter. So I think there's some value there in that spot. I'd also consider, again, call me a little crazy, but I might consider Eflin under 5.5 strikeouts here for plus 128. Like, this could be a big plus money flyer, and this is an Angels team that does definitely strike out, a fair amount. But he's had 5 straight starts, 3 of which this season where he capped out at 5 strikeouts. And he's a sinker guy, and he's going to throw a curve, which could be the strikeout pitch here, but also the cutter. The sinker and the cutter are 2 pitches that the Angels do not strike out all that much against. So again, plus 128. You got to understand when you're taking these plus money plays, it's for a reason. All right, Toronto taking on the Yankees. We obviously saw this game, this series a week ago or so. Yankees end up taking 2 of those. I will say with this one, the pitching, it's weird because Chris Bassett, not looking all that great. Louis Gill on the mound, who I also don't really like him that much, but he's actually looked okay in his 2 starts this season. So from a pitching perspective, I'm like, oh, we have an advantage on the Yankee side of things. but just I don't know if we do. I would say that like the numbers look like we do, but we don't have the biggest of sample sizes here. So slight pitching edge to the Yankees. When it comes to offense, I think there's a massive advantage here, which makes me lean towards the Yankees. But I'm gonna go Yankees first 5 because their bullpen, which should be way better than this Toronto bullpen, but their bullpen's very taxed. Their closer went, setup man went, and then 3 of their middle relievers in yesterday's, and Clay Holmes, their closer, has now tried to close 2 days in a row. So I do think that this is a spot in which, you say, okay, let's look at the Yankees. Love the spot, but we're not going full game because if this gets into the 6, 7, 8, 9 inning spot where Toronto ends up having an advantage because of what we've seen from obviously the Yankees bullpen lately. They're good, but they've pitched a lot. So first 5 for me or nothing probably in this game. From a total perspective, like I said, first 5 or nothing. I don't really love the total here. We did see a few low scoring games when these two teams played, and then we saw 2 really high scoring games. So recent history would say that this one could be all over the place. So I'm going to lean towards I'll lean towards the under. But, these Yankees bats have looked pretty damn productive as of late. So maybe we leave that one as a lean. You know what I mean? All right, the other team in New York here, we got the Mets taking on Pittsburgh. On the mound for the Mets is going to be Adrian Hauser going up against Martin Perez. This is a weird one to look at here because Perez actually looked really good in that game against the Tigers in his last start, right? They end up losing that game because the closer comes in. What was his name? Barnhart or Loser or something like that. And it was just like, all right, Perez looked good. They don't get the win for it, right? He had 7 Ks through 8 innings, 1 earned run, 6 hits. So I give him a little credit there. Hauser also looked okay in his first start. It was against Detroit as well. And then he pitched against Atlanta, and they kind of got to him. 5 innings pitched, 6 hits, 5 earned, only 1 strikeout. So is that like the Atlanta effect, like a good offense, or is it Hauser blew up in a sense, right? So I think you have to give pitching edge to Perez in this one just because of what we saw from his last start. But there's a pretty good edge in terms of the Mets against left-handed pitchers here. 3rd best average, 5th best WRC plus, K percentage down at the 5th best in terms of lowest, OPS 3rd, ISO 4th, slugging 2nd. So I look at this and I say, okay, you know what? Like, sure, even if you want to give the edge to the Pirates in terms of their pitching, right? I think that there's a bigger discrepancy when it comes to the offense, to be completely honest. And I do think Perez now is going to have, his work cut out for him, which maybe he didn't against the Tigers. I would say, hey, let's look at his under and strikeouts because of how well the Mets bats have been against lefties, not striking out. His line's at 3.5, so they clearly know that this is a low line, so he can't even touch his strikeouts. But this could be a spot in which I actually look at potentially looking at his innings pitched, which, we don't have a line for yet, but if we can get like under maybe 17.5 or something like that, that could be a move. Depending on what the line is, he's gone up and up in terms of starts. 4 1/3, 6 2/3, and then 8 innings pitched. So depending on what that line is, that could be a move. But I think I'm going to lean towards the Mets here on the money line, just due to the fact that they do have that offense, and I kind of want to say, all right, Perez, do it 2 games in a row. Show me, because he's had his struggles, right? But do it 2 games in a row. Show me that you're kind of nails right now. And then maybe next time you're pitching, we can take it into consideration versus an outlier, I guess. So, maybe I'm the crazy one in the room, but give me the Mets here on the money line. Obviously not that crazy. They are favorites in this game, but the pitching discrepancy looks like it should be Perez all day long. In terms of bullpens, both bullpens have been all right. In terms of what we're looking at from Pittsburgh, I would say that they're a better bullpen in terms of arms that they have to go. They should be good to go as well. So I maybe would say let's consider this in the first 5 then, first half money line if we want to try and take out and isolate the starters here versus considering the bullpen. So that's a spot that I would go. In terms of a total here, not much of a lean, but maybe a slight lean towards the under. All right, White Sox taking on Kansas City. I don't think I'll be betting this game. Kansas City is too big of a favorite, and I feel like I'm not getting a good enough price if we were to take the flyer on the White Sox. Nick Mastrani on the mound for the White Sox, which obviously we don't have much to go off of here. Going up against Seth Lugo, who actually has looked like he's starting to put together a decent 2024 season, but again, those odds at -186 just seem a little bit too out of the range there. So this game's, something that maybe I'd consider Kansas City throwing them into some sort of a money line parlay. But other than that, it's not necessarily going to be anything. Not going to be anything that I truly am like racing to the window to try and place. Total 8.5 right now. Give me the over. Maybe I'd like to think that the Royals can put up a decent number here, and they have been putting up a decent number, 5.3 runs for so far, and the White Sox 5.7 runs against. Like, if Kansas City can give us nearly 6 runs, then I do like the idea of maybe the White Sox putting on the board, 2 or 3, that type of thing. But again, not my favorite game on the slate. We have plenty of games to dive into more than something like this, where I feel like we'd be forcing it. All right, before we get to the last sort of portion of the slate here, I do want to shout out the merch brand that we have here on the channel. If you guys want to support us even further, check out fademe.store. It is the merch that we put a lot of time and effort to here. Tons of cool stuff over there. Our newest one being the They Don't Boo Nobody shirt, which just kind of spits right in the haters' faces. They're talking. We're sitting there having a drink, watching the sun go down. We also have the Money Gun button up that we wore in a couple streams, a couple shows ago, and in a stream. This thing was really, really cool. But we got tons of new stuff on the store as of right now. The hockey jersey, the Money Gun collection, Scared Money Don't Make Money, tons of stuff over there. Again, guys, if you do want to support us and support what we're doing here, check out the merch. Really good quality. This is not just stuff that we go and throw a logo on and say, hey, here, have this, and it peels off. This is really good stuff that we put a lot of effort into sampling and whatnot. So go ahead and check it out. Fademe.store. Absolutely love the support that we've gotten so far since the launch of this store. Like, it blows my mind, guys. Appreciate the hell out of you. And if you haven't picked anything up yet, consider picking up today. I'll put the link in the pinned comment. Just go browse. If you don't like anything, all right, but you might find something you like. So go ahead and check it out. Fademe.store. Jump into this game here. We're looking at Milwaukee taking on San Diego, which should be a good game here. Milwaukee catching an L yesterday, which I feel like everyone was on them, but kind of makes sense, right? Like, this is a team that has just been almost getting disrespected with odds, but batting the ball like they're the best team in the league in a sense. So I think if in the last 10 games here for Milwaukee, if you were betting $100 in every one of their games, you'd be up like $211 or something like that. So they're definitely looking good when they win. San Diego, also a very profitable team, and they just took 2 of 3 against the Dodgers. They took 2 of 3 against Chicago. Like, looking very, very good here. And from a Musgrove perspective, he's on the mound for them today. He's been where this game I could see some sort of like a, tough spot. So he has one good start on the year, and it was against St. Louis. So, okay, mediocre, right? But he pitched against the Dodgers in Korea, didn't look all that great. Pitched against San Francisco, didn't look all that great. Pitched against the Cubs, didn't look all that great. So he hasn't had the easiest of goes, but he's going up against Joe Ross here, who has a couple starts on the year as well. One good one, and then one decent one. So I do think that there's a chance that Joe Ross could outperform Musgrove. Obviously, Musgrove's going to have sort of the track record and everything like that, but from an offense perspective, like, I can't see past this Milwaukee 2-2-2. Like, there's ranking so high against right-handed pitchers. I do think that there is an edge when it comes to their batting. So for plus money odds today, I think I'm going to go with the chalk pick, which I imagine a lot of people are going to do the same in taking a peek at the Milwaukee Brewers here, just again, due to the fact that you're getting decent odds. Now, in terms of a bullpen, their bullpen should be fairly healthy. I think their closer may be taxed, but from a San Diego perspective, they are absolutely running thin in the bullpen. So you're going to ask a lot of Musgrove. If he doesn't get it going, this is a Milwaukee offense that could pour it on early and almost make those later innings obsolete if they get up to a big enough lead. So I'd consider Milwaukee first 5, but I'd also certainly consider them full game as well. And then I think in these types of spots here, right, like it's just like, give me an over. Until we kind of see that Milwaukee's not going to be this offensive powerhouse, we can still take an over. Like yesterday, it was a 6-4 game. That's still cashing an over, you know what I mean? And that was a game that they lost. So this offense is just on fire right now. I don't care if we've bet them enough that we've made money on them. If they lose a couple here and there, it's like, okay, now we can reevaluate. But right now, it's kind of just like auto play Milwaukee to some degree, like we kind of sniffed it out yesterday, right? We leaned Baltimore, that cashed, but in a spot like this for plus money against a team in which I think they're putting a lot of weight into Musgrove, I want to lean Milwaukee. And also, like I said, take a peek at the over. All right, we got Houston taking on Atlanta. The wild card here is that we have Spencer Spaghetti Arrighetti on the mound for Houston, and then Darius Vines on the mound for Atlanta, who we don't know much about either one of these guys. In terms of his first start, Arrighetti up against Kansas City, pitched 3 innings, 7 hits, 7 earned runs, 3 walks, and just 3 Ks. So he didn't look all that great. Last year, we saw a little bit of Darius Vines here. Didn't look terrible. 2 flat ERA in 2 starts, averaging 5 strikeouts per game. So, okay, give him a little bit of credit, right? In terms of what we have from an offensive side, Both these teams should be great against righties. Atlanta crushing righties this year. First in average, first in WRC plus, first in on-base percentage, first in OPS, first in ISO, first in slugging. Absolutely great. But Houston, not too bad themselves. Third, first in average WRC plus in K percentage. Fourth, and ninth in when it comes to on-base percentage, OPS, ISO. So both teams should be batting the ball well, and neither one of these bullpens looking all that great. It's a high total at 9.5, but I think that that's probably going to be a really, really public play. But give me the over in this one. We don't have, much to say that these pitchers are going to do squat, and we have some bats that should be batting righties fairly well, and the bullpens haven't really, lived up to much this season. Give me the over 9.5 as my main lean. From a money line perspective, I'll look at Atlanta just due to the fact that, first, like this offense should be crazy. So if this becomes a shootout, I think that they have the upper edge. And I think we're going to get bad odds for this. It's going to be like minus 130, but I also don't mind looking at the Yerfy. Yes, there'll be a run in the first inning in this game, just due to the fact that, again, we have two pitchers on the mound that really shouldn't be able to compete with these bats. Somehow, some way, they probably will, right? But I just don't see this being a spot that, the pitching is what wins or loses or anything. And this is going to be an offensive game, so I think getting off to an early start is going to be pretty important for both teams. So I think there's going to be a run in the first inning as well. All right, before we jump into this game, go ahead and give me a 35 in the comments. These baseball videos are long, man. I know some people are like, oh, you talk too much and all that, but I honestly do love talking about each and every game, and I don't want to skip past games, so maybe we can work on trying to streamline these and whatnot, but I do love, just talking sports. So the fact that this is a long video, it's a grind for me. I get it. It's a lot of watching for you. I understand, but to me, it's like, hey, I want to go through everything that I have to say versus kind of skipping around and trying to make a 40-minute video into a 20-minute video is so much crazier than some of you guys might understand. Like, that isn't the easiest of things to do, because when I'm here talking alone in a room to a camera and a microphone, I'm thinking everything I'm saying must be said, right? So getting that through your head of like, hey, let's try and cut the fat isn't all that easy. But we got the Diamondbacks. Drop 35 in the comments as I give you all that fat. It's like, let's get to it. But we got Merrill Kelly on the mound for the Diamondbacks going up against Ben Brown here for the Cubs. Ben Brown in his first start, 4 2/3 pitch, 0 earned runs, 5 Ks, 1 walk, 16 pitches per inning against San Diego. So pretty good. Merrill Kelly, honestly, not off to a terrible start at all either. 2.29 ERA, pitching deep into games. So I want to give him credit there. 6 2/3, 7 innings, and 6 innings pitched for him. So nice, good on him. And this isn't really a Chicago team that rips righties either. So I do think that this is probably a spot for Arizona, but clearly everyone thinks that based on the odds, right? Minus 150 is probably too much to be playing for this. Paying for this, excuse me. So if you are thinking a flyer on the Cubs, I would almost say you could, but for plus 120, it's like, I would want a little bit more than that. So the price doesn't really work for me, but I like Arizona. Just because I'm trusting Kelly, and then I think that, this is a Cubs team that kind of is middle of the pack in terms of, right-handed pitchers, whereas Arizona, I'm not saying they're a better offense against righties. I'm not, but they walk a lot and they don't strike out a lot. So if you have a guy like Ben Brown who isn't totally proven, right? It's like, okay, like maybe we see him and it's like, all right, this guy might be able to, or might sort of slack off and have some issues. So kind of where my head's at in this spot. Overall, in terms of a total, 9 runs, I'm going to lean towards the, it's tough because I could see both these pitchers, like Kelly all of a sudden being like, hey, there goes my good starts, and Ben Brown not being all that great, but both offenses aren't superb against righties, right? So I'm going to lean slightly towards the under. Oh, this is such a weird one. We got Oakland taking on St. Louis. Stripling on the mound for Oakland. Sonny Gray on the mound for the Cardinals. He actually looked pretty good in his start this season. Not Stripling, Sonny Gray. I guess I'll lean towards St. Louis in this spot. Do I like the idea that, you're paying minus 170? Hell no, that probably makes us not play it, but this Oakland team, I just feel like, maybe I'm wrong, but I just feel like they're playing out of their shoes right now. All these home runs and whatnot. And St. Louis is kind of lackluster as of right now, so I think things kind of get back to norm in this spot. But if St. Louis was at home, I would consider actually playing it, but on the road here, it's not necessarily my favorite spot. They're 4-6 this year on the road, but Oakland is 3-7 at home, I believe. So there is some level of like, well, they've been worse at home than they are on the road, but I'll take St. Louis. In terms of a total, it's 7.5, but I know I just said the Ross Stripling hasn't been great and Sonny Gray looked good, but this is a battle of two mediocre at best offenses, so I'm definitely staying away from the over. So I guess by default I'm leaning towards a 7.5 under, which certainly seems a little bit low, but I can't get myself to the over. All right, Seattle taking on the Reds here. This is honestly one that we may be betting just due to the fact that Seattle has been so offensively poor against righties this year. Second worst average, second worst WRC plus, worst K rate, worst OPS, worst on base percentage, worst ISO, worst slugging. Like, I mean, if you look at this, it's actually kind of crazy, right? Frankie Montas, okay, like we'll give him some kudos, not all the kudos, but we'll give him some kudos in terms of how he's been pitching, going up against George Kirby, who wronged us the other night against Toronto in his last start here. But maybe you have a Cincinnati team that's worth pulling the trig on in terms of their odds. Plus 134 on FanDuel right now for a team that's won 3 in a row. Like, I think I may be able to get behind that. From looking at the bullpens as well, there's an edge to Seattle, definitely. Cincinnati's bullpen's kind of taxed. They've been looking pretty poorly, to be honest. I would say Seattle's bullpen should be good to go. So if you play this, or if you like this, maybe it is a first five, or, first half type of money line or something like that for Cincinnati. But yeah, you might even be able to get decent odds on Cincinnati plus 0.5 in the first 5 because they are underdogs today. So I think that the value's on the Cincinnati side of things. I think that they could totally go out there and win this. Seattle's kind of dominated them in the past, to be completely honest, but Cincinnati just became a different team in the last year and change, right? So there could be some value here on the Cincinnati side of things, coming off of a good series where, yeah, no kidding, they played the White Sox, but they beat down on the White Sox, so they kind of did their job. And Seattle only take one against the Cubs. They took one against Toronto. Like, they haven't been winning series as of late. So yeah, I like that spot. I also don't mind taking a peek at the over in this spot, because I think if this becomes sort of a scoring type game, it helps Cincinnati as well, because they're going to have way more offense to go than Seattle, because the Seattle offense is tough. So the one concern I would have, obviously, is taking an over when I just listed last in the league for Seattle. But I don't want to give Frankie Montas all the kudos. Like I said, there's still room for him to improve, and he could get Seattle could look better than they have as of late against him. All right, Dodgers taking on the Nationals. Tyler Glass now on the mound for the Dodgers. On the mound for the Nationals going to be Mitchell Parker. Huge favorites. Not even probably worth putting in a money line here. So I guess I just look at Dodgers minus 1.5 or absolutely nothing. I don't think you're going to catch me even finding value at taking Washington plus 1.5. So minus 1.5 is going to be what I look for. But even that, you're going to get crap odds. So this is probably a game in which a lot of people, are going to just pass up on. I can't see much wagering going on in this game. Total sitting at 8.5. So right now, this Dodgers team, obviously a good team, averaging plenty of runs scored. And I don't know what to expect from Mitchell Parker. But in terms of him being a lefty, the Dodgers haven't had the craziest season against lefties. Washington has actually had a really good season against righties. Now it's Tyler Glass now, so that's going to be a tough spot, right? But I think I'm going to lean towards the over, just because if Washington can get maybe more runs than usual, which they're averaging 3.7 runs for, if they can get to 4 runs, which would be absolutely crazy, I still think the Dodgers put up 5+, right? So this is going to be an overplay for me, and it could be something that I roll with, even though I just said that, I'm not going to be looking at this game too hyper-focusedly, but the over is going to be the only thing I could consider, because 8.5 is kind of low for what I would picture this. But obviously they're saying it doesn't matter if Washington's hitting righties that well, Glasnow's going to come down and shut him down, right? So that's kind of the thought process. But 8.5, that's why we're getting a decent line, right? But guys, it's going to wrap for today's show. Hopefully you guys did enjoy. Appreciate everyone tuning in. I say that multiple times a video, but the last year of doing these videos and whatnot, we've obviously been doing them for a long time. I started Guy Boston Sports nearly a decade ago. Started as a blog, or started on Twitter, started as a blog, moved into live streams on Twitter and whatnot, and now we're really focused on YouTube. guys have changed my life. So I appreciate the hell out of you guys, and I'll catch you guys in the next one, all right? Peace out.